Good evening and welcome. I'm Bob Pace, your host, and here we are to talk about CPS and fight to get your children back. Now, CPS stands for Child Protection Services. Most of you pretty much know that, but they have different names around the country, different states. But it's an agency that's part of social services. It's a federal agency. It's mandated by law to protect children from neglect and abuse and also reunify the family. Reunification is one of the things we're supposed to do. And it seems lately they don't like reunification. They don't like the idea of the parents getting back with their kids. In fact, a lot of cases, CPS pits the parents against each other and tries to break them apart. Tells them ridiculous things like, you got to live somewhere else. You can't be together. So, anyway, I want to welcome you all for finding us. I guess you search this through Facebook because that's where it's advertised at. And this is done on YouTube, is the way we're broadcasting. And we're using a SteamYard as the application. Now, this podcast is produced by Vincent W. Davis and Associates. It's a law firm in Southern California with many talented lawyers in all different areas. Now, the one area that you're in is family law. You're in a dependency court, you're dealing with juveniles. So, you need to have an attorney. That's my golden rule. That's the number one rule I tell you. But before I talk about that, I'd like to tell you how you can participate in this podcast. There's several ways you can participate. One is you can text a comment. All I ask is you put your name and the city and state. And if you're from other countries, that's fine. I've had people from Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and Ghana talk on this show or text on this show with their concerns about CPS. CPS is bad everywhere, and a lot of the parents are duped into giving up their children. Now, another way to communicate is if you want to talk on the show as a guest right now. I try to have guests on the show every night, every morning. But right now I have no guests scheduled. There's sometimes they're scheduled, but they fall off. Now, the talk on this show, all you do is call my office number 626-698-0990. And that'll ring my office phone, and I will put you on speaker, and you'll be able to talk about your case. You won't be seen on this show, but you'll be able to talk about your case and maybe help others that are listening. That's the important thing. We want to help people that are listening. They're going through the same mess as you all, and it's a big mess. CPS is a big mess. Now, if you don't like to talk right now, I have a producer. Her name is Grace, and she works really hard at this, and she would really like to get you on my show. All you do is email her at grace at vincentwdavis.com. That's all you do. And she can schedule a time, one of my 14 shows. I'm on 7 days a week at 10 in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. It's for 1 hour Pacific Standard Time. Now, there's one exception. On Sunday, I come on a half an hour later because there was another broadcast before me. And sometimes I do make changes on the times, but most of the time it's at 10 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. And if you email her, she will tell you how to get on this application and be a guest, and you'll be able to see and talk about things that will help other people. It's important we all work together to share stories and how to bring our kids back. Because what's happened is right now, CPS is doing child trafficking. The Children's Protection Service is doing child protection, doing child abduction. And what I mean by that is they use a ruse that the child's in imminent danger. Almost 99% of the cases start out where they invade your home. You don't know that you're not supposed to let them in there, but they get in your home and they take your children when they're not supposed to either. And that's a ruse they do. And solely for they get the money. When they open a case, they get the money, the federal money and the state money. And it all comes in. And it's a lot of money. It's like almost $20,000 per child per month. So, with a lot of kids taken aboard, that's a lot of money. It's a billionaire, $1 billion business. They're making billions off the children and get it from the government. It's ridiculous. All they want to do is have you adopted in in foster care. Now, when they do this, this is called child trafficking. When they take a child solely purely for money, and that's what the bad people do. And I live in the state and the city with the highest child abduction than any other place. Child trafficking is really heavy here, and children are put into prostitution overseas and slaves of homes. And I guess it's because we have a lot of wealthy parents and good looking kids that can be easily snapped up and taken and put on container ships and shipped overseas and wake up and their passports taken if they had a passport, or their driver's license, whatever it is, the identity of them. And in a strange country, you are definitely lost at the mercy of these people. And it's sad because child trafficking is happening everywhere in other countries. What they do is that the child traffickers set up a business, like a modeling business. Your child's so good looking, you want to get her into models, or dancing if your child has a really good talent in there. And they dupe the parents and give the child, and then the parents come back later and the child's gone. The child is gone. There's been some terrible, terrible movies made too, where the children are definitely abused. Young girls, young guys. It was so sad. And this is happening in undeveloped third world countries. So you got to be heads up. You got to know what child trafficking is done. You need to be heads up about CPS. Do not trust them. They may try to be your friend. They may dupe you, but they're not honest. They're not honest. And what they want to do is they want to make money off your child. And they seem to hit the people that are out of work, that are homeless, or no income to fight. They don't want you. So one of the things I tell people to do is that when you talk to them, tell them that the answers are no, 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 but that you have an attorney look at this paperwork or talk to you if they say they want your child or want to do a home inspection. Say you have your attorney look at it, because they don't know if you do or not, and you may not have one, so you can go ahead and try to get one. And I'm not talking about the public defender that give you in dependency court. That's not the attorney I'm talking to you about. That attorney is labeled a public defender. Their caseload is so heavy, and they really won't help you because they're in pals with the kangaroo court. Yes, it is a kangaroo court. Now, I'm telling you all this firsthand. At age 60, I lost my job through no fault of my own. I'm a caring, loving father with a family of 6 children, 3 older ones and 3 younger ones. Yes, I've been married twice. And I'm currently married to my wife for 32 years. And my young family right now is 18, 24, and 21. When they attacked me and took my kids, they were 9, 12, and 15. And I was 65 at the time. At 60, I lost my job. And I said through no fault of my own because the state of California was going bankrupt. and they had to write me IOUs for some construction work that I had bid on that I was awarded, but they couldn't pay me because they say they had to use the money elsewhere. And I did try to go to banks to get credit lines, but they didn't want to give credit lines. They didn't like the state of California and IOUs. So I had to close my doors as a general contractor and look for work elsewhere. And at that age, it's hard to find work in my field. I'm a civil engineer and I do work in heavy highway and roads. And I do all aspects of the construction. I'm a senior estimator, a senior project manager, a senior construction manager, a senior inspector. I do all the areas. And so I am looking for work, but it's really, really, really hard out there. Now, I've been fighting CPS for 14 years. It started in 2010. And in 2010, when I lost my job, I was going through a perfect storm. Before I lost my job, I had my retirement of 40 years reduced in half because the place of employment I worked at invested money in stocks and bonds, and the market kind of collapsed in 2007 because of the predatory loans. And yes, I had a predatory loan. That is a loan where a lender gives you a home, the money to buy a home, and that they have dockered up the documents and doubled your income. Like you put down what you're making and they double it so that you would qualify for a home. And I was always questioning that because I moved up from a low home to a very expensive home. And I was surprised that I qualified for my first. It was a lot of money. And now I look back, I wish I'd never done it. I wish I had never done it. I should have stayed in the previous home, and when it's all paid off, maybe I've been better off today than I would in that other home. But, that's Monday night quarterbacking. You never know. It's like my job that I took. I'd worked for a long time at one company, for a long time, and I moved because I wanted to do something better for my family. Higher salary, better working conditions, a nice office and everything. But it didn't last long. It did not last long at all. The only thing I did, if I was still working at the job I had before, I would still be working. I would never have lost my family. I would never have gotten into the problem I did. I would never lost my home. So I don't know what it is because, I try to improve myself. After 30 years at a company, it gets a long time. You want to improve yourself. But anyway, that being said, this perfect storm was hitting me. Lost half my income, had a predatory loan, was laid off at work, and then CPS was investigating me. And they were based on allegations by a layperson. I found out it was my in-laws. You see, there's two kinds of people that make allegations. The professional people, like doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers, counselors, those kind of policemen that work with children, are required by law, if they suspect child abuse or neglect, they have to call it in. The job is. And most of the time, when they call it in, it's pretty truthful what they found. Now, if they see a child with a black eye, that could have got from maybe a sporting event they're in. And when the parent talks and shows the doctor report, then that gets easily disproved. And so all that was is a teacher checking on that. So I've not heard of too many professionals, except the other night, a lady said that the pediatrician was in cahoots and wanted her children. And it was really terrible to hear that because everybody puts trust in people. We look at our government and we think, hey, we have a beautiful democracy, we have a beautiful government, and we want to trust them. We want to trust our policemen. But there's so many horror stories lately about bad policemen, bad social workers, bad child protection workers. I mean, It is horrible. And I know what you're going through. It really is. But on top of all what I was going through, my parents were dying. And they told me that they wanted me to help them settle their belongings and give them to family and friends and relatives. And they asked me if I could take them. Well, I wish I did not say I would because it got me into trouble. All their belongings I loaded up one day with my daughter, my youngest daughter, and she and I brought all the belongings home and were sorting through them and sent them off to relatives and whatnot. But those additional belongings in my home created my problem with me. And I did not really think about it. But the Child Protection Agency was on a witch hunt. They're upset because they can never find anything wrong with me. When they had reports of me supposedly with no electricity, no water, no natural gas, and no food stuff, I proved it all wrong. I showed them the utility bills that I paid. I showed them the refrigerator. I ain't let them in the house before my parents' belongings were in there. And my house was fine. They saw the food, the cupboards, and everything. They saw the children's bedroom. They were clean. And the children went to school. I showed them the grade reports. And we as parents were very involved with our kids. We went to back to school night. We went to teacher visits. We went to their recitals, their performances, the fair at certain times of the year, all the Christmas activity, all the things. We were very much involved in our three children. And our three children first started in elementary school. And as they got older, each of them moved further. Our daughter went to middle school and our son was going to high school. But it was a private high school because we wanted him to have the opportunity because he wanted to be a robotic engineer. And the school had a lot of robotic programs. And so my son, got himself involved and was excited about that. And on the STEM program where he'd take a science class, a technology class, an engineering class, and a math class. Every semester he was doing that. And my daughter was interested in volleyball in middle school, and she could play that. She was on a STEM program, taking those classes. And she didn't know what she wanted to be, really. And then my young son, he didn't know what he wanted to be until he got to middle school, and he wanted to be an astronaut. So he's been going to private school. And fortunately, he got to play on the number one football team in the country and won 2 national championships, first as a sophomore and second as a senior. So he's had a really, good experience. But what Child Protection Services, they ruined our family. We had a functional family. And because I didn't have a job, they knew I couldn't get an attorney. They knew that I had a very expensive mortgage to pay and I had a lot of bills. My property taxes were ridiculous. Something like $13,000 every 6 months. I had a very expensive home. And I was paying a lot of money per month. And when you lose income, the money that I had saved, what little was left of it, I used it for a couple of years to stay in my home. And all I could see is CPS constantly hounding me because they wanted our 3 children. They wanted the $60,000 per month for the 3 children. And that's a horrible, horrible feeling, be so helpless with the agency. I had no idea what I know now. It is dangerous, that agency is. They don't protect you. They don't protect your rights, your constitutional rights, and your civil rights are violated all the time. And they do it solely for the pleasure of getting money. They don't care about you as a family or as a human being. That's something that's sad because child protection, there is bad cases of parent abusing kids. No question about that. But why have they switched the pendulum and now they prey on low-income families and take their kids for the purpose of getting that money? I mean, that's what happened in my case, and over the 100 some people I talked to, different parts of this country, that happens again. Now, I just have another person or someone that texted in. It is Woodpecker Bluff Real Country Living. Well, that's an interesting name. It'd be better if you could choose a name that's a little bit more appropriate, because I don't know what you're trying to convey there. You said, "Thank you so very much for telling your story. I'm a grandmother in Indiana. There's so much wrong doings outcoming right now." I agree with you. I agree with you. We have someone that is a grandmother. I'm going to put her display up there. It's an interesting name, Woodpecker Bluff Red Country Living. Or is that Real Country? Real Country Living. All right. Well, that's nice that you got to live in the country there. If you like to talk on this show and be my guest, I'd love for you to call in at 626-698-0990. That's 626-698-0990. Too much to explain, but DCS has kidnapped my 5 grandchildren. Don't know who to trust to report. I'm sorry to hear that, and I will try to help you. I'm not a lawyer, but I have some ideas that could maybe help you. So, her 5 grandchildren have been kidnapped, and I believe that. I believe that. They definitely do, where they take away the kids. Oh, they have a bird watching site. That's why they have the name. Oh, that's interesting. Well, if it's too long, we got a lot of time here. We still got over a half an hour. You could talk about your case, and maybe you could help fees in. I don't know what your daughter did to have her children taken away, but that is bad. That is really, really, really bad. And I feel for you. My 3 children were taken away when they finally tricked me into letting them back in my home. And that was a nightmare. They weren't in imminent danger, but CPS thinks everybody's in imminent danger. All based on hearsay. You need to know your rights. You need to do some research. As I mentioned earlier, my rule number 1, you need to get an attorney. Now, this law firm that's producing this podcast has a family law attorney that can fight CPS, that has fight CPS, and has had the children come back. His name is Vincent W. Davis. He is a fighter. He's a trial attorney, and he has beaten CPS and gotten children back. He'd very much like to talk to you. He has a consultation for 30 minutes of $49.99. That's $50. Then he'll talk to you about the strategies of fighting CPS and getting your children back. That's $49.99, and that's for 30 minutes. It's well worth every penny of it. Because after you talk to him, you're going to want to hire him. I did. It just took me a year and a half to try to fight this on my own. Now, fighting I did on my own. Now, this attorney, Vince Davis, all you do is you call 888-888-6582. And when you talk to the office, tell them that Bob Pace sent you and that you want to schedule a consultation with Vincent for 30 minutes. And they will help you out. Now, when you talk to Vincent, make sure you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. And then after you talk to him, you may want to retain him. He practices law in Southern California, Northern California, and all the 50 states. He can help you. He will fight you. He's actually sued CPS in a civil lawsuit. So he knows how to sue CPS and win. And he will get your children back. He will get your children back. So, you know, um, Woodpecker, I, I hate saying that name because I know your name's not Woodpecker, but I appreciate if you think about calling in because it'd be nice to hear more about you, about why your daughter had her children take away, what happened with the allegations and what the allegations all about and so forth. Now, how they duped me or how they got me was terrible. I pick up my kids every day since I was looking for work. I could do that. And when I picked up my son, I didn't know that I was being followed by a detective in an unmarked car. And he followed me for quite some time. And then I saw a black and white pass the other way. And then he made a U turn and put on the lights on me. And of course, by law, you're supposed to pull over. So that I did. And when the officer in uniform came out, he said something about, you ran a stop sign. I said, I ran a stop sign? There is a stop sign where my school gets out, but I know I don't run it because I count to three: 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000 before I leave. And if it did, why did he not pull me right away? And then when I started questioning about it, he said, there's a guy there that wants to talk to you. It was a ruse that the police was tricking to me to talk to the detective. And the detective said to me, without introducing himself or what he was there for, he said, you're going to follow me back to your home. I said, I'm going to do what? He said, you're going to fall back. I said, I need to pick up my wife. She's waiting for me. No, you come back. Don't worry about your wife. So here's a police detective being ruthless and deception, all at the guise that CPS said that I'd done something wrong. He didn't tell me what I did wrong or anything else. He made me follow him back, and he's wearing fatigues and combat boots. He wasn't too friendly looking. And maybe he had other alternative motives. I don't know. I have no idea. But he was bad news. He's the bad news bears. So I followed him back to my home, and sure enough, in front of my home, there's all these people standing. I said, why are they standing? Is there a fire? Did my home burn down? Did someone break in? There's 5 firemen. There was 3 social workers. There's 2 uniformed policemen. There's 2 code enforcement. And then there was the detective, all in their combat boots and battle fatigues. And I said, geez, looks like they're going into battle somewhere. That was not friendly. And I knew that seriously I was in my seat. And they said they want to see my house. I said, sure, I have nothing to hide. Little did I know the mistake. I let them see my house again. Because at this time when I see my house, I had my parents' belongings out. I was sorting through the box, and it was kind of cluttered. And they didn't like it how my parents' belongings were stacked or the furniture was stacked or the clutterness. And they say, you're being neglectful. Those boxes could hurt the kids. And I said to myself subconsciously, how could the boxes do that? Do they have wings? Can they fly up? Do they have fists they can poke at the kids? No, this was a strictly contrived false trick to get my kids in, open up a case. Maybe they were angry for 5 years because they couldn't find anything and they're constant barrage by my in-laws saying there's something wrong. See, my in-laws, when we got married, my wife and I, they didn't show up at the wedding. And we had children. They always want to take our children. They want their children to come and visit them. And I had no idea all this was going on. This is something that I found out later. But they're the ones that made the complaint week after week, using the CPS to alienate the parents from the children. Alienation is against the law. You don't alienate people. That's wrong. You don't alienate people strictly for that reason. So they proceeded to go through my house, my yard. I had a very big house, fairly new. It was built in 2004, and this was 2015. So it's 11 years old. It was not that old. And I had some of my parents' belongings underneath tarps in the yard, and the yard was overgrown because I had no money to pay the landscaper. And the firemen were busy dismantling my fire alarms, make sure they work, and then measuring the distance. I guess there's a certain procedure. The fire alarms were installed per code, and they're put in by the builder. And they work because all you do is press a button, they go beep. So the firemen were looking for something. The code enforcement, was checking to make sure the back door was locked and secured. They couldn't go to the swimming pool. The swimming pool was surrounded by a fence, had a locked gate on it, which it did. The swimming pool, again, everything's up to code there. The only thing that I was violating the code, they said, was that my fence was too loose. It needed to be tightened up, which I don't understand. I have CC&R's rules to go by the private community, and I was all up care with them. The yard that said, well, it's a little shaggy, you need to trim it and so forth. They were so trying to pick something, and all they found was neglect to my children where the boxes could harm them. And on top of that, the police detective reports all this information to the district attorney. The district attorney decides to do a duplicate charge. But they had something else. They had sex charges. They didn't define what was sexually wrong or sexually happened. They just put 3 counts of sexual. And then he put 3 counts of neglect, both my wife and me. So they wanted to make it a criminal case and a dependency case. And these social workers, these child protection social workers were terrible. They were saying, well, we can't do anything because you got a criminal case. And I see now all the ploys of why they do all this stuff. The reason why they get the police involved is so the police can make a report and duplicate the same charges. Plus, the police know if they put down some other charges that they can drop because they want you to negotiate. And it took them a year. And I finally said, sure, drop them off. There's nothing expected. He said, well, we'll drop all the charges off your wife, but you're going to have to take the hit for neglecting your children. We'll write in the report that the boxes may injure the children. That's why you're charged with neglect. My goodness. And that was a misdemeanor. And I had to go through a year of probation and see a probation person and take a drug test, which I wasn't doing drugs, and have my home. I had to live apart, by the way, because CPS put a restraining order on you. And so I had to pay for expense of another place. And, well, that didn't happen. I should correct myself. I stayed in my home until I sold it. That's what it was. So my wife was so disenchanted at the dependency court hearing where they talk about her case plan and took away her kids. She went to a home for battered wives. And she wasn't battered, but she felt she was. She learned a lot in there. But they had a home for her. And she had a place, I guess, with me in the house. It was too depressing, I guess, or whatever the case may be. But I fixed the gate, I know, made it nice and strong, so I got code enforcement happy. As far as the yard, I tried to start picking it up and cleaning up there. And with CPS, at first I was open to them, but then they tricked me, and it's just, you don't trust them, you don't trick them. Now, at the safety planning meeting, they have a hearing where there's going to be a placement of your children. Now, Woodpecker's written something, and this is the reason why she can't talk. I'm afraid I'll get upset if I call. My daughter-in-laws don't like her or me. From the start, almost 7 years now, 3 times when I've had taken in my daughter and her kids, I've been slandered. I know that so well. I was slandered by my in-laws. They hurt our family. I know that. The case was so bad that my wife had to relieve her past, and it was terrible. Her family members abused her as a small child, she found out. She had scalding hot water put on her as a form of punishment when she was in early 7, 8. And then she had hot coffee thrown as a punishment. And then, if that was not better, then she had her brother molest her. And her parents didn't protect her. And those three incidents would be easy calls to CPS, and sure would have been taken away from her mother and her father. And then she went to a concert at 15 and got raped because her sister, who was over 18, didn't protect her. And we found out her sister was the instigator. She works in social services. She knows how to say the right buzzwords and punch words. She took advantage of her job, in her other state and made the allegations that weren't true. That was so wrong. So I know what you're saying, Woodpecker, about how your family is slandered and everything on that. Now, as the case bore on, it got worse and worse. There's a lot of misconceptions and not honesty about it. One moment, please. Okay, sorry for the interruption here. Um, um, I'm doing this podcast from my home, and so I got family that wants to join in. And so, anyway, um, it is a very hard thing to go through. You know, my wife gets raped at a concert at 15. And where is the protection of her parents? She should be going to a concert. Her sister, who's a social worker, who's behind all these allegations, is the one that called in and did all that. And she didn't protect her sister at the concert. She went to the bathroom, got lost, asked a couple of guys to help her, and they took advantage of her. Plus, she had a child out of that rape, and she put the child up for adoption, and he's turned into be a good man, and he's done well in life and everything. So, my wife is finding out things. She's, really disillusional when they take away our children. I tried to hold down the fort, stay at the home, and fight. And boy, did I try to fight. You can complain. I didn't know how to complain. There are certain people you can talk to about doing complaint. I went to the top dog, the director of CPS in Southern California here. And his place, by the way, was the Taj Mahal. It looked like the Emerald City out of the Wizard of Oz. And I said, what you're doing is wrong. And he listened, and his people listened, but it went in one ear, it went out the other ear, and it seemed like it got worse and worse as time went on. Worse and worse as time went on. It was sad. It was really, really, really sad. Because you can't trust them. Now, there is, let me see if I can find it here. So, um, I was trying to ask for other social workers to work with me. They're denying that right. When I went to trial for the dependency, it was a kangaroo court. The judge was in cahoots with the public defender. Public defender was representing me. The social worker attorneys were friends of everybody else, and they went to lunch together. They played golf together, so it was worthless. And plus, they don't allow you in the courtroom. This court is different. They don't have a trial by your peers, and I think they should have a trial by your peers. I think there's so many wrongness of this CPS. It really is. During the safety meeting, right after they stole our children, we wanted to know where they would stay. And so they asked for a list of names of family members they could stay with, because that's where you really want your kids to stay at. You don't want them in foster care or in shelters or in the group homes. That's not the place for them. And so we suggested, my wife's sister and her husband, they were fine with it, but they thought it'd only be a month that they have to do it. They didn't know this be dragged on month after month after month. Also, at that time, they mentioned something about the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act. And they're required to do so because if you are of Indian blood, your children are taken care of by the tribe, not by CPS. The family members of that tribe take care of the kids and help them get back to you, and do a lot better job. This act was passed because of so much abuse that the Native American Indians were taken. Their children were the number one person to put in foster care. They didn't care about the Indian children. As you know, in the 1800s, if you don't know, that's when the Indians lost all their ways of life and were forced onto reservations. And they were forced into schools where the hair was cut and they had to wear European clothes. And they had to speak the English language. They weren't allowed their customs or their language or the foods. They were told to forget their culture. They're trying to make it die out. And so many women and children were murdered towards the end with the wars and the acts by the we're supposed to be inferior, but we really are animals, if you think about it. These American Indians were the first immigrants into the United States, and they came the way of Alaska through the land bridge there from Asia. And they moved, eastward, down through Canada, down through North America, down to Central America, down to South America. And that's how a lot of the cultures got started, like the Incas and Mayans and Mexicans. They all were influenced by the Spaniard conquistadors, or the people in the area. Now, there's people that also came from Africa on the raw expeditions, and then from there they went out to the South Pacific in the Kon-Tiki expedition. Showed that. So South Pacificers were the same problem. Europeans always want to put their ideas better, their lifestyle, and I think that's gone from the beginning of time, even back in Great Britain during the Vikings, and the way things are. It's really interesting how America was settled and how it's come. So anyway, this ICWA, I know it's a long story there, but this ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, forces CPS to contact federal recognized tribes to see whether you're registered or could be registered as American Indian of that tribe. Tribes like the Lakota Sioux or the Crow, the Cheyenne, the Navajo, the Arapaho, the Iroquois, the Indians of the West, the Southwest, the East, the Northern, so forth. Because if you could be registered, you could there. In fact, they don't, they look at you and say, you're not Indian. But I have Indian blood in me. My great grandmother, two greats, was a full blooded Lakota Sioux, married to my great grandfather, who is a Viking from Austin, Norway. And my grandmother was from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. But they ignored me. They ignored my equal rights. So if any of you are listening that have Indian blood in you, make sure you follow the ICWA. You look that up on the internet and make sure you follow it. Because you're entitled to have your kids helped out by Indian families of the tribe and put back and reunify with you as parents. They do a lot better job. They're not in there for money. The Native American Indian people, most of them are very poor. They live a very meager lifestyle because we tried to change them from a plain Indian who traveled the plains and ate off the land to a Western idea of a farmer, and we gave them land that couldn't grow anything, and we didn't help them. The food that we gave was contaminated. There's so many. I gotta stop on the Indian because I love them so much. I want to help them, but they're supposed to do that ICWA Act there. So our case, when I tried to fight them, I'd write them emails and everything else there. There's a complaint procedure that needs to be followed, and now I do want to talk about something that's also very important. That during your case, if you want to make changes to your case or introduce new evidence or things that are new and so forth, you can file what's called a 388 motion. Now, maybe a different name in each state, so you got to check out the state. What it is, it's a motion about modification of juvenile court judgments and orders. They are to be filed if there's a change of circumstances or new evidence. They're used to petition a court for a hearing to change, modify, or set aside any previous court order or terminate the court's jurisdiction. It's a petition for a hearing to change, modify, or set aside any previous court order. So those are the words you should use. It may not be, I know it's in California, it's 388. Maine, it's 388 because I talked to someone from Maine. Now, all people got to be filed that motion. The children, attorneys, the probation officer, all the people got to be filed in that. And within 30 days of the filing, you will have your hearing. Now, that's done in dependency court where you had your plan and everything. And for instance, if you complete your classes or there's some new evidence about drug testing that you're clean and so forth, that's how you introduce it. That's how you change your current plan. So remember the 388. Don't forget it. That's really important. It's really, really important. I'm trying to read what Woodpecker's been texting. Woodpecker's the grandmother from Indiana. She said earlier, they'll literally try to get people on anything. They don't get the people who deserve it, but the people who don't deserve it get it. And she said she gets upset if I do the call. My daughter in laws don't like her or me. And from the start, almost 17 years now, 3 times when I've taken in my daughter and kids, I've been slandered. Yes, I did see that earlier. And then the grandmother has been investigated by adult protection service for trying to help. Now, why would they investigate you as an adult protector for trying to help? I just learned a few days ago that the visit supervisor sent one granddaughter very inappropriate texts. Wow. That sounds terrible. And before I forget, rule number 2 is you have a notebook to write down everything. You write down the date and time of your incident and who is involved, the children, the social workers, the police, and then you want to write the what the incident was about and then the outcome. The outcome may come later. And you do this in this notebook and you skip a couple lines, do the next incident, next it should be all filled because you'll need that information later when you fight them. And I know how she feels because this grandmother is experiencing what I experience. What I have is pretty much of over the 100 some people I've talked to have had or had to go through. And that's when you can't believe. And, I'm educated, I have a college degree. And if I was working at the time this investigation came, I would have had my attorney and it would not be all this. It's shame because only the rich people seem to benefit and the people that are poor, you know, they go after. They go after them to get the money. And that's wrong. That is so wrong. There are groups started up. I know there's the Hernandez family in Georgia. There's another group in Raymore, Kentucky. But I've heard several groups that have been guests on the show here that they're trying to make changes. And changes are going to be really hard with this agency. This agency lies and cheats and uses deceptions. They're not transparent. They're not interested in taking care of you. Now, she says that the supervisor that did that has been fired, and he is a teaching assistant in a different area of Indiana. Yeah, it seems like bad people seem to keep coming around, coming around. Now, Woodpecker says, the grandmother says, the other girl reported this to DCF. I'm afraid I got swept under the dirty rug. So I guess another reporter reported the bad social worker. And of course, they take advantage that grandparents don't have a right to want to take care of their grandchildren. She also says that she has at least 40 quarter-inch Indian blood, her daughter does. And in Casa asked the daughter if she wanted kids. with Indians. I discourage that how badly they've been treated on on uh, on reservations. Yes, I think that's why my Lakota Sioux heritage was suppressed, because my relatives didn't want to be associated with Indians, and I'm proud to say I'm Lakota Sioux. I'm proud of the American Indians. I'm proud of everybody in these United States. I love you all out there. I know you're trying to fight hard to keep your children, and you should. It's been studies shown that the best children are best with their biological parents, not with foster care. Foster care has turned out to be no good. It really has been. Furthermore, Woodpecker says, thank you for bringing this up as well. Yeah, I try to hit on everything. It's hard within 1 hour. Plus, I try to maybe present it a little differently, because I know people are getting tired of hearing my story. But maybe there's something I can tell you that will help you when you have your case. Because there's a third rule that I maybe mentioned earlier about not talking to social workers or letting them in your home. They will use it against you. They did with me when I invited them into my home. They didn't have a warrant. You see, they need a warrant to take a child from you or invade your home. And that warrant is a court-ordered document that's done in court, and it shows the name, the place they're supposed to go to, the date, and the people involved, and what the allegations are, and signed by a judge. So if any of you have CPS come knocking at your door, don't answer it. I mean, you have an answer machine on your phone, they don't answer it. You have a mail, they could write you in the mail. When you do get information like that, or a business card on your door, you need to contact your attorney, because you can't fight them. I tried. Yeah, I tried. And I had to get an attorney to fight them. Oh, Woodpecker, it stands for the Indian Child Welfare. The Indian Child Welfare. Let me try to get the spelling for you here. Okay, Indian, Indian, Child, CHILD, Welfare, WELFARE, Act, ACT. And it's very important information for American Indian, Alaskan Indian, Native families, in all the states. You need to see that. And you can contact the Tribal State Program Unit of the Jurisdictional Council Center for Families, Children, and the courts. Provides support to local courts on tribal issues and assists with the development of policies, positions, and programs to ensure the highest quality of justice and service for the Native American communities. The unit also serves as a liaison to those communities in cases related to the Indian Child Welfare Act, ICWA, and family violence matters. So the ICWA is really important there, Woodpecker. So that's good there. Oh, I'm so sorry you have a disability. Also, I think CPS likes to deal with people that are handicapped or disability, that are homeless. It's not a crime to be homeless. It's very hard and difficult to survive in this country. And this girl, Christy Miller, said that she has spent 4 years in the foster care system. 2 years were spent in various fosters. The other 2 were a group home. Wow, Christy, I'd love to have you on my show. Um, welcome you. I don't know where you're from, Christy Miller, but you can uh, email Grace, my producer, at grace at vincentwdavis.com, and she'll help you get you on the show. I'm pretty much out of my time, and I've gone a little overboard here. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you, the grandmother and Christy Miller, for talking on the show. And I want you all to come back again tomorrow morning. God bless you all. Good luck in the new year. Much success and happiness. And don't stop fighting to get your children back. And I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.